Raiders. Everybody cooling bomb.
Everybody's homecoming.
Has criticism of Jalen Hurts been overblown?
Yes. Yes. All right. He is about to win the NFC East for the second straight year, for the first time in 21 years. Dak hasn't done it. Romo never did it. Michael Vick, when he had his great years in Philly, didn't do it. Eli Manning, Carson Wentz, Nick Foles, when they had a little hot streak.
Nobody since McNabb,
Nobody's
right?
done it. Yes, since McNabb.
Yeah.
And so he's about to do that. He has beaten the Chiefs, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Packers, the Lions. In a loss to Denver, he throws for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. In a loss to a victory of Brian Flores, who's a great defensive coordinator in the Minnesota Vikings, threw for 326 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, I think the reason he's criticized are 2 things. One, he is not your typical, quarterback, just be in the pocket, 6'5", throwing the ball all over the place like a Joe Burrow or somebody like that. He's different. He runs. He doesn't run like Lamar or Josh, but running is a big part of his game.
He used to run a little more like Josh. He doesn't run as much. A little bit,
but he's never been that. Yeah, he's not. And he's a leader, and in big moments, he's at his best. I think that's one that he does it differently. Again, I've used this before, but like a Tyrese Halliburton. He scores 14 points. People think, oh, he had a bad game. And not necessarily. He had the offense humming. He's passing the ball. So that's kind of how Jalen Hurts is, a different type of player. And the second problem, and why this happens, I think, is A.J. Brown. If A.J. Brown had never said anything a year ago and wasn't reading books on the sideline, listen, we haven't heard anything negative from A.J. since he's been getting the ball, even when they were losing. And so I think if A.J. had never said anything like that, I don't even think we'd be looking at Jalen like that. So I think it has been harsh, and I think they're live in the NFC that's wide open.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a little overblown. I'm not going to say we wouldn't be saying anything because of A.J. Brown, if A.J. Brown hadn't said anything, because I do believe we would still be talking about Jalen Hurts. It's simple. In a passing league, when you have a quarterback that doesn't have the running game that we were accustomed to seeing last year, the expectation is you're going to supplement what we don't have. And that's just not Jalen Hurts. And everyone wants to knock it and say, well, you're knocking Jalen Hurts. And that's just not who he is. Can he be that in moments? Absolutely. We've seen it at the highest level in the most important game of his career in the Super Bowl, in the brightest spots. We've seen him be that. It's just the level of consistency to expect him to do it every single week. That's never been who he is. Yeah. And so if we're saying we want to see that, and that's our expectation, criticism, yes, warranted. You gotta get on them. It's a part of the territory when you're playing that quarterback position. But for a team that is a run-first team and has struggled, he has to wear some of it. Because of the struggles that they've had offensively.
Yeah, I don't think it's overblown at all. Listen, I think the very brief moment, it seemed like the local Philly media was like, should we bench him? That was overblown.
That's ridiculous.
Like that, right. So, but I think we recognize that was ridiculous and an outlier thing. Before I answer this, though, can I react to that sound? Because I do not have the reaction to that sound you do.
That I did.
You thought it was awesome. I thought it was. Think about that. It's a moment of celebration. And the first thing out of Sirianni's mouth is, see, the stuff we were getting criticized for, scheme, it was good.
Yeah.
And the first word out of Jalen's mouth is, the stuff I was getting criticized for, it was like
a telling piece of
right,
stuff.
it was a telling, because he's like, the coach says, to me, the positive spin would have been if those quotes had been reversed. If the first Jalen comes over to Sirianni and Sirianni's like, man, you ripped it up the seam. And Hurts is like, man, you schemed it wide open. Instead, Sirianni's like, you like that scheme, buddy? And he says, you like that throw.
I think some of that might be because then Sirianni's gotten more involved in the offense the last 2 weeks. So I think that might be, you know what I mean, might have something to do with it.
Sure, I don't think it's a huge thing, but I do think it's a telling, it's an interesting look in.
It provides zero meaningful insight. I am genuinely astounded. Perhaps this stems from my background in actually comprehending human psychology, having formally studied the subject and worked as a counselor. I may need to remind myself that not everyone possesses an understanding of behavioral dynamics, interpersonal interactions, and communication. I must keep that in mind to preserve my sanity, because what is currently being suggested is utterly nonsensical. The exchange between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni was a fantastic display of camaraderie and celebration, with both now engaging in lighthearted banter about it. A playful, you better compliment my design, met with, you better compliment my throw. The notion of interpreting this negatively is ludicrous, absolutely ridiculous. Jalen Hurts can operate a high-level passing attack when the necessary structural support is present. That is the fundamental reality. We do not observe consistently elite aerial offenses in the absence of elite offensive scheming and coaching. This is an indisputable fact. Shall we use everyone's current favorite reference point, the quintessential veteran quarterback? Let's proceed. Consider Matthew Stafford's tenure with the Detroit Lions prior to Sean McVay. Not a single playoff victory, only 3 playoff appearances, a record of 74 to 90 to 1, a completion percentage of 62.6%, a touchdown to interception ratio of 282 to 144, a passer rating of 89.9. And this was with one of the greatest wide receivers in NFL history, Calvin Johnson. His circumstances improved instantaneously upon joining Sean McVay. Yet, even with McVay, he still required substantial talent around him. Last season, when Puka Nacua was injured, Stafford's production dipped to 2 touchdowns against 3 interceptions, performing below the level of Aiden O'Connell and rookies like Bo Nix and Caleb Williams. Speaking of Williams, he lost to a struggling Chicago Bears team last year, and also to the Arizona Cardinals during that period, posting a passer rating of 83.0, and this was under McVay's guidance. This illustrates a crucial point. Even within imperfect systems or during stretches of questionable coaching, quarterbacks can still produce remarkable plays. Stafford had endured a difficult streak with a multi-turnover game, but prior to that, he was on a phenomenal run with 22 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions, totaling 30 touchdowns, very few of which were simple quarterback pushes. The persistent critique focuses on volume being insufficient, which is illogical when his efficiency metrics are exceptional. Using Stafford as a benchmark to criticize Jalen Hurts is misguided. The critique should be directed at the coaching and supporting infrastructure, not shouldered by Hurts. When Hurts has competent coaching and a sufficient supporting cast, his statistical output is elite. When those elements are compromised, his production reflects that. Intriguingly, this pattern describes virtually every quarterback in NFL history. Why were Patrick Mahomes' statistics diminished in the previous 2 seasons? Injuries and supporting cast issues. Why was Matthew Stafford's success rate in Detroit relative to his later years? Coaching and roster quality. What differentiates Caleb Williams' performance this year from last? The presence of offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. We perpetuate the same circular conversations, and it is intellectually barren. The Philadelphia Eagles' ground game, statistically, ranks 19th in yards per game. If you subtract Hurts' rushing contributions, it plummets even further. They possess one of the least effective rushing attacks in the league, comparable only to the Las Vegas Raiders, a topic I've covered extensively. Despite this, Jalen Hurts continues to produce impressive numbers. The narrative suggests the Eagles' passing game is struggling, yet Hurts has 22 touchdowns against 6 interceptions, a ratio that ties him with or places him near several heavily praised quarterbacks. Sam Darnold receives extensive acclaim. Bo Nix, from most analysts, receives praise. Trevor Lawrence is lavished with praise. Justin Herbert is constantly praised. Prior to last weekend, Jordan Love was the subject of nonstop adulation. He has 23 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Hurts, 22 and 6. Drake May is endlessly and understandably praised. 23 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. I fail to comprehend the discrepancy. May benefits from an offensive coordinator with a proven pedigree. Jared Goff's performance in that offensive system changes fundamentally depending on whether head coach Dan Campbell or his offensive coordinator is calling plays. Commentary has praised the offensive resurgence since Campbell assumed play-calling duties. Perhaps this indicates coaching and play-calling matter, advantages the Eagles and Jalen Hurts have not consistently enjoyed. Astonishing. Trevor Lawrence is significantly improved this season. What changed? The arrival of offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. Baker Mayfield has regressed. What changed? He lost Liam Cohen. Remarkable how that works. Justin Herbert and the Chargers are winning more games. What changed? They hired Jim Harbaugh. That aligns logically. Caleb Williams, whom everyone is exceptionally high on, has 21 touchdowns and 6 interceptions with over 3,100 yards. Jalen Hurts has 22 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Williams' completion percentage is 58%. Hurts is 65.2%. Williams operates with a roster widely described as stacked and arguably the most heralded coaching hire in a decade in Ben Johnson. This context is critical. Pro Football Focus ranks Jalen Hurts within the top 10 at 9th in their offensive rating metric. He is the conspicuous outlier on that list. Matthew Stafford has unequivocally great coaching. Jordan Love has Matt LaFleur, a proven excellent coach. Josh Allen has Joe Brady, but Allen is a unique talent. His situation is distinct, yet no one alleges he has poor or questionable coaching, especially regarding his coordinator. Dak Prescott receives universal praise for Mike McCarthy's offensive management. Drake May, again, has a coordinator with an elite pedigree. Sam Darnold has Clint Kubiak, who has been superb. Justin Herbert has Jim Harbaugh or Greg Roman, both established, successful coaches. Trevor Lawrence has Liam Cohen, a massive upgrade. Jalen Hurts has a coordinator whose name is unknown to the vast majority of fans outside Philadelphia. The head coach is referred to derogatorily as a doofus. Is Matt LaFleur called a doofus? Sean McVay? Mike Vrabel? Jim Harbaugh? Liam Cohen? I think not. Ironically, Mac Jones appears adjacent to the top 10 in these metrics. Mac Jones was considered a bust, a definitive backup, the subject of endless mockery. Yet, under Kyle Shanahan, he posted a 69.6% completion percentage despite injuries to key players like George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, accumulating 2,151 yards in 8 games with a 97.4 passer rating. He was inserted into the lineup and performed. Why? Shanahan. Coaching aids, benefits, and elevates performance. This is not a complex concept. Why do we persistently pretend these factors are irrelevant? Frankly, I must state something I haven't articulated before. I find it profoundly impressive what Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and to a degree Joe Burrow, with caveats as he's often grouped with Mahomes, have accomplished. They have consistently operated in imperfect environments. I frequently remind Eagles fans they should appreciate belonging to a franchise that generally understands team building. The achievements of Allen and others, despite falling short of a championship, are remarkable. The Bills' roster has perpetually felt incomplete. Their coaching is not terrible, but is not on the tier of McVay or Andy Reid. This is why commentary becomes defensive when anyone suggests Patrick Mahomes entered an ideal situation, because he objectively did. It's an indisputable fact contested only by the most partisan supporters. For Jalen Hurts, the dynamic is different. He has been undeniably supported from a roster construction standpoint. However, the coaching instability he has endured year after year is extraordinary. I consistently reference young quarterbacks, and here is my consistent principle. I recently explained why I place Bo Nix and Caleb Williams on a distinct developmental track. Nix is in his second year with Sean Payton. Williams is in his first with Ben Johnson. Therefore, I anticipate more sustainable growth from Nix and am more forgiving of Williams' inconsistencies. This is because the coach is actively developing the player, and the coach's understanding of the player deepens over time. It's analogous to a relationship. You don't know everything about a person in the first 3 months. Over time, you learn nuances that allow for maximization. A coach must learn, how do I maximize this player? What are his strengths to emphasize and weaknesses to minimize? This is the essence of that partnership. Jalen Hurts has never enjoyed that continuity. Never. It is a perpetual annual reset. Regardless of roster talent, that is an immense challenge. As I've demonstrated previously, the most critical relationship in all of professional sports is between the quarterback and his primary offensive play caller. Jalen Hurts receives a new one every single year. To expect him to magically achieve perfection under these conditions is irrational. During the Eagles' significant run from 2022 to 2025, across those 4 seasons, he had first-time play callers for 50% of that period. One was fired amid public criticism from analysts like Troy Aikman, who questioned his grasp of the art of play calling. They then brought in another coach, leading to a situation where the head coach had to become more involved, clearly not the intended structure. The 2 times he had established experienced offensive coordinators with legitimate resumes, the results were unequivocal: a Super Bowl appearance and a Super Bowl MVP award, and he was the frontrunner for regular season MVP until injury in 2022. When provided with a sufficiently talented roster and a competent to great offensive coach, Jalen Hurts has led his teams to the Super Bowl. He is literally 2 for 2 in those specific circumstances, a perfect batting average. That is extraordinarily impressive. Matthew Stafford has never taken a team to a Super Bowl with a subpar coach. Neither has Josh Allen, neither has Lamar Jackson, neither has Patrick Mahomes. Not a single one of them has. This underscores the monumental importance of coaching. Why do you think these coaches command astronomical salaries? Why is the workload they undertake so immense? Why are figures like Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, and Andy Reid virtually revered? When asked how long the Chiefs' dynasty can persist, Patrick Mahomes' instantaneous, unrehearsed response was, "As long as Andy is here." He didn't offer a platitude about teammates. He identified the coach. Players understand this intrinsically. Former players consistently emphasize the importance of coaches like Reid, Shanahan, and McVay because they, as athletes, recognize when a coach is optimizing their abilities. Yet, we consistently neglect to highlight this factor, allowing criticism to fall disproportionately on the quarterback. Regarding Hurts' limitations as a passer, and it is fair to acknowledge he may not possess the same pure passing ceiling as a Matthew Stafford, I am comfortable stating Stafford will likely always be a more refined passer. Many Eagles and Hurts supporters accept this distinction, whereas fans of other quarterbacks sometimes refuse any comparative critique. The problem is that criticism automatically targets Hurts exclusively, ignoring systemic factors. With proper, stable coaching, Hurts' areas for improvement could be systematically addressed and refined. That process requires great coaching. It does not occur magically. When analysts dissect film from games where Hurts made errors, the solution lies in coaching that helps the quarterback grow and learn from those mistakes. It is virtually impossible for Hurts to experience that growth with annual coordinator turnover. Substantial development occurs in the offseason, through continuity and deep understanding. He has had none of that continuity. None. Yet when he had 2 experienced, established play callers, the outcomes were Super Bowl appearances and top 5 statistical production across the board. The residual critique focuses on a perceived lack of passing volume or touchdowns. Under those ideal conditions, the production was more than sufficient for championship contention. But those are simply my reflections. Incredibly accurate and grounded reflections, I might add. I would love to hear yours in the comments below, as I'm sure they will be equally grounded and accurate. What are everyone's thoughts? Is the criticism directed at Jalen Hurts excessively amplified? I've realized a pattern. There is a tendency to downplay nearly every quarterback except Patrick Mahomes, and perhaps Matthew Stafford and Baker Mayfield. Everyone else faces disproportionate skepticism. Share your perspectives below. I read every single comment. Whether you agree with me or challenge me, let's engage in some dialogue. Let's have some spirited debates. But ultimately, let's simply enjoy the conversation. Please consider subscribing. We are cultivating an incredible community here and would absolutely adore your participation. I aim to build something we all feel a genuine connection to, something we're truly enthusiastic about joining. I believe we are making significant progress toward that goal. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely assists with visibility and the platform's algorithm. Thank you so very much. I will see you all next time.